What's up, Mr. Chad Greenlee?
We are back, and it feels good. I mean, blessed a good weekend, right? Finally hitting some spring and summer after being teased in the winter, which was nice. I don't know about you, but that
It
felt
makes
good.
a huge difference, doesn't it? With everybody's mentality and, just seeing neighbors out. It's crazy. Like here in Iowa, I don't know if this is like your neighborhood, but in the winter, it's like you're on your own, right? So you might as well be in like in Alaska. Everybody just like does their thing and they go inside, do their thing. Maybe you'll see them snow blowing, shoveling, but like nobody's like, hey, how we doing, Tim? Good. At least in the summer or spring, people are, able to open up the lines of communication a little bit. So I kind of like that vibe.
Yeah, what do they call it? From you don't see your neighbors. There's a conspiracy theory that you know me and conspiracy theories, right? Like you never see your neighbors taking groceries inside.
Groceries, yeah. I had a friend randomly like 3 months ago text me that. Have you ever noticed? Notice next time you've ever seen like your neighbors doing groceries. I'm like, where the hell did that come from? Monica did that. Shout out to Monica.
Oh, we'll make no conspiracy theory about it. This is a spin and strategy again. So where we mix music and business from the POV of a seasoned wedding DJ, Riley Mullane.
Yo.
And an experienced business advisor, yours truly, Chad Greenlee. So hello once again. We're back. And I think when we ended a conversation, we were talking a little bit about a few topics that I wanted to get out on the table today. And I think today when we think about just kind of business in general, and I've been traveling a little bit. And so I think what I'm seeing is kind of this sea of same, as one of our good friends, Kyle Steele, always says, like, swimming in the sea of same. But I wanted to kind of hit upon how just different views of, how to innovate in kind of a saturated market. I was amongst a bunch of business owners a couple weeks ago, and they've been doing, and I'm noticing just kind of trends and some observations. And these are physical observations, but then when you kind of peek behind the curtain, you see a few things. So, but I think things to hit on that, last time we talked, there were kind of three things that we didn't get to, and one of those was we're seeing kind of the death of Amazon Go,
Yeah,
and kind of just this race to self checkouts, and I don't know if you've been seeing that, but I think everybody raced to it, and then they're kind of pulling back on it.
Yep.
And I mean, what is your take on self checkouts?
It depends on. Well, number one, it depends on if I have my kids or not, because maybe I mentioned this last time, but it's like efficiency goes out the window anywhere you go with your kids. And it's obviously a blessing to have those memories with them when you do take them places. But, when they're scanning things twice and you got to have an associate, or, if you are, I don't drink, but I remember when I would purchase alcohol products, when you scan something, you got to have an associate, or, there seems to always be issues somewhere down the line with self-checkout. I know like Aldi, they've gone, I think, all self-checkout. I think
Yeah, they got like one open now, right? Just one.
Yeah. So that's been great, because I'll usually go in and like get 5 things and then I'm out of there, which is so I don't have to like wait in front of somebody that has, a month's worth of groceries. I like self-checkout personally. I usually have an earbud in when I go somewhere, so the less I have to socialize and have to have small talk with people about things that really nobody cares about, the better. So I'm a big fan of self-checkout, depending on how close an associate is, in case there is an issue that is beyond my control. Does that make sense? Versus waiting 15 minutes.
Fan of self-checkout with conditions.
With conditions,
right?
Yeah,
Not like blanket across the board, right?
Yeah.
It's not perfect.
How about you?
I've been kind of conditioned with the behavior, right? I do a lot of, I've migrated to pickup, and then kind of self-checkout, and now I'm kind of in this delivery mode, and it's a trade on time, right? Opportunity costs. Like, if I don't have to think about it and I can just do it in the morning, and then it arrives and then put it away, my kind of like laundry, right? My biggest hiccup always ever has been laundry.
Yeah.
The worst thing is folding it because it just sits in that bin. It can sit in that bin all week,
It's
right?
terrible.
And you just walk by it. But then
Yes.
when you get it done, you feel good. But then guess what? It's you're pulling the same stuff out, you're washing it again, you put it away. That's groceries. It's like the cycle is just crazy, right? It gets delivered to the store. They put it neatly on the shelf. You pull it out and put it messily in your cart. Then you take it out and then you put it back in bags and you bring it home. You put it in, they put it away, and then guess what? To consume it, you take it out, you throw it away. It's like this vicious cycle, and I just think it's it's pointless. So if I can eliminate like one or two of those where I don't have to take it off, put it away, and then and then only have to put it back. That's kind of
So let me
my
ask
take
though,
on it.
with the delivery uh, process that you're utilizing, do they mess up your order quite a bit, or has it been pretty
Actually,
flawless?
no. Not much at all. And if they do, the return process has been a lot easier. I've noticed like kind of the cost of just um, returning things is more of if it's an under a certain dollar amount, right? They just
Mm,
I'm sure there's some type of algorithm that if you're doing it frequently, it'll flag you, and
yeah.
then it'll be harder. But if you're halfway honest, I'm sure.
I need to do that more. Every time I hear of somebody doing it, we have some friends that live in Des Moines that they live and die by the Walmart, like and Target, right? And they're like, Melissa and I were having a conversation about how we hated to go into Walmart and stuff, just depending on how busy it is and whatever else. And they're like, why don't you just get it, like just pull up curbside? And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess you can do that. I always forget you can do that, honestly. So I need to start utilizing the apps more. We've been utilizing the apps for like every now and then for like Jersey Mike subs. Asher gets out of jujitsu, and every now and then we'll get one of those. And it's like, oh yeah, why are we parking, going in, ordering, waiting in line in front of 7 people, going through all of that, versus as soon as he's like wrapping up, I can get on the app, get everything customized the way everybody wants it, and it's done by the time we get there. So honestly, I always forget that convenience is there.
Right, and I think it's just a conditioning, right?
Yeah,
Our generation's kind of in the middle of all this technology,
totally.
right? We've learned we had to do everything ourselves, and now there's this convenience opportunity. And then you look at like your kids and my kids, like DoorDash, you have Instacart, you have delivery, you have Amazon. I mean, everything is right there. And but you got to be kind of be proactively thinking about it, and that's got to build into your habits to do it. And then I think the flip side of that is if it doesn't work, you're going to be like, well, I should just do it myself, right?
Right,
And that,
right.
but if the younger generation just coming up, if it doesn't work, they'll just get a different
Right.
app.
Yeah. They're not going to change their ways. They're just going to try to find something that's better
Nope.
in
Yeah,
regard
we'll just
to.
be like, we'll just default to the way that we've always used to do it, is I
Yeah,
think.
yeah,
So,
yeah. That's a great point. Yeah.
but I think, you hit upon like the conditions in technology, and this other, story that I saw recently was, Amazon Go. We talked a little bit about Amazon Go, where you just walk in and you can walk out. You don't have to um, mess with your wallet, mess with anything. You just pick it up, it's charged to you, walk out, and everybody's enamored with this technology. It's just beautiful. It's like, how is Amazon doing that? Well, it comes out that this walkout technology is really not this AI. There's 1,000 employees in India that are watching, and I dug into this a little bit. 90% of all purchases had to be verified by a physical person in
Wow.
that.
I
And you're
mean,
just like, what a great marketing uh
yeah.
spin on it. But behind the scenes, Oz behind the curtain is actually pulling all the levers
Oh,
and checking
for
and
sure.
verifying. It's just the technology's not there. The idea was there, but the technology's not there, similar to self-checkout, right?
So I haven't been following this story very closely, like from a media side of things. Have they shut all that down, or
I think so. They're scaling it back and moving into more what I've always thought of as like smart shopping carts. Like
okay?
if you put it in a shopping cart, you should charge it right there. Feel kind of like, I think if you go to Sam's Club, you can scan and go, right? And then you eliminate, yeah, because they're big purchases, right? But if you had like 150 things, that probably gets pretty consuming.
Or
But,
like the nice hotels where, like in Vegas, where you take the water bottle off and it has like like a weight,
you can't put it back.
$13 for your 4 ounces of water that we filled up in the kitchen.
It's a great idea and a great technology. But again, like with anything else, the idea is sound, the marketing is sound, self-checkout is sound. There's always conditions, and it still requires a human. We talked about AI, like it'll get smarter eventually in technology, but there's a check and balance that just it can't think as fast and as situational as individuals can that have been doing it a while, right? Or doing it repeatedly.
Right.
It's very binary. If this happens, this has got to happen. And when a human is involved, there's like, well, there's 6 different ways to solve that. And I know the best way at the best moment, judging by the person and their attitude.
For sure. Yeah, I think there will be a lot of conditioning for people to get used to having that be their go-to. And I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head, but I mean, in kind of similar but completely different vein would be like when Uber came after the taxis, right? It's like you're so used to getting a taxi when you go to a larger city versus using your phone. And now somebody said like everybody has their own limousine service now, right? It's like it's just, your whole mindset shifts as far as how you can be transported, paid transportation from point A to point B. I think when you look at grocery shopping and some of these mundane tasks that maybe you can elevate for the consumer, I think that's where I think any chance you get you have time to elevate an experience, even if it costs you a little bit more money. It takes a while for some of the more kind of frugal minded people to enter that portal, but they will eventually. Like they will end up doing it eventually.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of comes down to kind of the last thought on this before we kind of get into the saturated markets and your take on it. But I saw this funny TikTok, and it was this customer pulling up and they're pulling up in a drive-through, could be coffee shop, what have you. And the person on the other end goes, "Hey, are you here to pick up your online order?" He's like, "No, I'm just going to order." "What do you mean you're going to order?" Like, well, yeah, I just want to order. And they're like, "Well, can you get on the app?" It's like, "No, I just want to order." And then, so they order and they're like, "Well, hey, why don't you just come in and fill it up yourself?" like do it yourself. And I think that's so opposite, but you can see kind of that, what do you say, draconian area where you can almost get to there where you walk in and like nobody is there. You have to make the burgers and everything yourself, and then you pay and walk out. Like,
yeah. A workaround. I've heard somebody tell like it's a workaround where it's like you can get your own drinks, and you can like, isn't this awesome? What a great hip establishment! Like you can do it all yourself. Oh, and by the way, make sure you leave a bunch of gratuity for us. Thank you so much.
Probably flips around and says, "Here's a 20% tip," and you're like, "Oh my gosh, that's a whole nother rabbit hole." The tipology that we could get into. So, well, we kind of always have kind of this deep dive in getting into kind of behind the scenes on something. And, I wanted to relate this to both of our businesses a little bit. You just kind of kicked off over the weekend, kind of the big wedding season.
Sure did, up in Minneapolis.
There's 1,001 DJs, I'm sure, up there, but you drove up. But we've got a bunch of saturated markets, and everybody is trying to race to stand out. And I'm thinking about this big statement where individuals are wanting to be more corporate and almost have that corporate presence, and corporations are wanting to be more individualistic and build individual brands. And that comes because you're trying to swim and stand out amongst everybody else. So as we think about this kind of saturation and how businesses can stand out, I mean, you're a case in point. You stand out by service, by doing things a little bit differently, by kind of sticking to the basics and honing them. But totally. I mean, you went up to Minneapolis, that's 5.5 hours away. I mean, why? I mean, maybe you knew the person, but still they could hire somebody different.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was a friend of mine that I've known for a while, but haven't been in touch with her for a very long time. But we were in the industry together at one point, and so she had me come up there, and I was blessed to be able to go up there and DJ. It was a huge wedding, great hotel ballroom, incredible staff. I mean, so accommodating. And that's the thing too. You just you're dealing with professionals by the way you are initially greeted and taken care of. And I can't tell you how many venues miss the mark on that, by the way. They're just dealing with way too much volume. They don't have the staffing. They're not ready uh, to be in that category, because you can go to a place, Minneapolis, Southwest Minneapolis Marriott is where I was at. I'm going to give them a shout out. Andrea, who helped me out. She's incredible team. But it was interesting because every time I go to a, now that technically was probably my 700th wedding, if I had to guess. I mean, without exaggeration, probably. I walk into a wedding and I act as if it's my first wedding, and I'm kind of like just the happy to be there kind of guy, right? And I'm super nice to everybody, probably overly nice to everybody, because that's the only way I know how to do things, right? It's like the minute you start to act as if you know everything, you're going to start to miss a ton of different things. You're going to miss out on really great opportunities to gain and establish a really meaningful relationship. And that's been the demise of so many people in my industry, the wedding and event industry. It's their ego. And for those that are listening to these episodes weekly, you're going to hear me talk about ego all the time, because it's something that I see completely crush businesses. And I've never understood that. So I have to be very self-aware to know that what I do as a full-time, professional wedding DJ, it's very subjective, right? Like, everything that I play may not be everybody's favorite song or favorite genre, or the announcements that I make, ladies and gentlemen, it's our cocktail hour, grab a drink, like, that might not resonate with everybody. So I have to be very humble and know that, like, there's just a lot of trial and error with what I do, and it's not a definitive way of doing things. So anyways, I always go back to my fundamentals, man. Like, that's just what it is. It's being nice, being compassionate, treating others how you want to be treated. And what's wild, and this is a true story, what's wild is when I was there, I was set up. I always preach, like, get there and set up early. Like, set up early so you can be of assistance to everybody around you. Because I promise you, somebody comes in with a cake, they need a helping hand to get something unloaded, or you're seeing somebody light candles. Now you can help them light candles. You're set up, you're good, you got music playing, like, you're good. So I'm all set up, got everything tested, and I've got 2 hours. Like, I've got 2 hours, I'm hanging out, I'm helping. And another couple comes into the ballroom, and they're from Minnesota, and they're with their hotel contact, or their wedding kind of planner contact for the hotel. And I've got some cool lighting, and my setup is pretty damn clean. I'm pretty OCD when it comes to that stuff. I'm not gonna lie to you. Everything's like white and just whatever. But I got these really cool, like, tube lights, and so I'm testing some things out. And from across the ballroom, here comes this wedding planner, and she goes, "Hey, is there any chance I could get a card? Maybe 2 cards, because I would love one." And then the couple, they love your setup. They just love the way that it looks. They would love more information on your services. And I'm like, well, I am from Iowa, but I would be more than happy to come. I mean, I'm here now, so I can come back up again.
That's right.
But it's the art of being prepared, and just being over prepared, so you can then go with the flow and seize those different opportunities. So
yeah, you talked about ego. I think that's very interesting. Do you think ego comes with experience because you've been doing it so long, and the kind of the freshness has worn off, and your life cycle of your business is, I've been there, I've done that. Like, I've seen your same situation, and I can see this kind of habit forming. Now there's a ton of business owners that are looking to exit or need to transition the business, unlike anything before. And I was at a conference speaking, and you look out and they're all of the same age. They're all kind of within that 10 years. I think there's a stat out there that says like 80% of small business owners are looking to sell their business within the next 10 years. Do you think if you've had that business for that long in yourself, like you're kind of in that middle, you've done it for a while, but you're still got some gas left in the tank.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think ego comes with just experience and kind of the freshness of maybe that wearing off, and it's time to pivot?
Yeah. And then I think the other side of that coin is the longer you've been doing something, the better you become, right? And then maybe for some, everybody else is just incompetent, right? Like I've reached the peak. Nobody else gets it. Nobody else is going to get here. I'm going to sell it. Like things just aren't what they used to be, right? So you almost like age out based on the frustration of competence around you, maybe. But for me, I have a mindset like everything could go away tomorrow, right? Like no matter what happens from an economy standpoint, I mean, like everything is volatile. Will people still get married in a terrible economy? Sure, they will, but they're going to start to trim the fat a little bit. I mean, they're not going to go crazy like they were, whatever it was 10 years ago. I don't know, but I like our house. I like providing for our kids. I like to be able to buy food and go on trips when needed and buy a pair of shoes occasionally. I like those things and I don't want that to go away. So to me, my protective barrier and the things that I can control is my communication, respect, compassion, kindness, how I treat other people, man. Like it's kind of not just out of how I am naturally, but a lot of that is if I don't do those things, my entire business is going to go away eventually. And I've seen that happen in our industry, man. I've seen it with photographers. I've seen it with cinematographers. They're jerks. Not all, obviously, but the jerks, they don't last very long. They just don't.
Well, and maybe they've been doing it a long time, and that jerkiness comes across as like know-it-allness. And
Right.
I think it's relatability. How
100%.
close to you are to your business. I read this great book, and I can't remember the title. Maybe we can follow up on that. But it talked about the phases of your career, and I think this actually works in the phases of business too. Is you kind of you have your learning phase and kind of your grind out phase when you're younger or in kind of the first stage of your career. Like you're working really hard, but you're also learning, and there's a lot of excitement there. And in order to get to the second stage or the second part of your career, you have to pivot, and you have to look at it differently. Like what I did before is not going to get me here. It's not going to bring me joy going forward. And they talk about being a mentor or teaching. You get more joy of teaching others about business and about the fundamentals that got you there, because your energy changes. Your circumstance certainly change, because maybe you've built a level of success and wealth that you're comfortable. Like you get more comfortable, as an example. But you can pivot your mindset to say, well, now I'm going to be a teacher, a leader, a mentor, and share with others and get joy out of that, versus having to do it all myself because I'm in a different stage. And that should plateau me to where, maybe I'm building towards retirement or sell my business or something like
that. I agree with all of that. And that is what you see a lot, by the way, on Instagram, right? It's here's what I've done. I sold my business. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Maybe they got what it's worth, maybe they didn't. We'll never know. Now let me teach you. And for $99, you can buy my 7-page ebook, and it will tell you how to scale your business from. Now, again, are there some individuals that were born to lead and born to inspire, and they really have a lot of authenticity and they really want their consumers to be successful? Sure, they exist, but it's few and far between as far as as far as I'm concerned. I'm very, 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 very skeptical with anybody that's out there calling themselves an influencer. Um, I don't know. I just think the louder that person is, the more red flags start to pop up for me. And maybe that's completely wrong on my end, but I don't know.
Yeah, I've had some really good experiences on, kind of my personal development budget and through writing cohorts and those sorts of things. Some very good experiences, and I think it's a lot with the credibility of the individual and their teaching style. And you bring up a very good point. And I've been noticing this too, and it's kind of coming to it's a very saturated market, in my opinion, is higher education. I graduated from a private university, 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago, and walked out with very little student debt. But I'm seeing articles now there, and I know a few professors that there's kind of this talent cliff, and it's coming in a way that nobody, I think, understands, and it's this balance between just feels like higher education's on the edge and
Mm,
not knowing what to do. I think there's some tune of like 4,400 universities in the United States.
wow.
I mean, think about that, 4,400 higher education universities, and think of the cost of education. And I think, back in the 70s, you could work, as an example, just one public university, you could work 2 untaxed weeks and pay for a semester of education. And now it's up in the teens
Yeah, I would love to know what
of
the average
wage.
tuition is per year across the country. I mean, it's got to be over 50,000, right?
I mean, it depends on where you're going,
Of course.
obviously, but I mean, you balance that against time, you balance
Yeah.
that against, I think, the return. And you talked a little bit about education, and there are so many different ways, and I think even organizations are seeing this. Like you got Google and IBM and Microsoft that have their own certification programs. Well, we'll just teach you, kind of like the trades.
Yeah.
We'll hire you. You have an aptitude. We'll just teach you, uh, designed to work for us.
Yeah.
Which,
Right.
I mean, the way to teach, the way to get education, the way to consume has lapsed. Kind of that need for the experiential that I think so much of higher ed has hang their hat on, right? Live in a dorm, be part of the community. And I think people's change, and there's some that works for, there's others that doesn't, but at the cost of what, right? We're at the cost of what, I think is where we really, I think that market is going to come, it's going to come to a headwind.
I totally agree. And I'm sitting back eating my popcorn, watching, like I can't wait to see what happens. Now, we haven't been doing this podcast long enough for me to probably be as transparent as I would like to be when it comes to my opinions on colleges and universities. And I mean, we'll get there maybe eventually, but I'd rather not get canceled this early into it. But no, I'm just kidding. Listen, I probably there's millions of other individuals that share my same thoughts on that. But by the way, you're talking to a guy that went 3 years at a community college that is designed to go 2 years, because I was just so not that I was. I personally I hate school. Like I hate the structure of, you need to be here at whatever time high school's 8 o'clock, and you go to this period, and you're gonna get tested and quiz. Like it was so, oh man, it's like it gives me like this weird brain cramp and anxiety.
Yeah.
Like because all I wanted to do, Chad, I wanted to work, man. Like when I turned 14, I was washing dishes, I was cooking, I was delivering
Yep.
pizzas. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted a
Mhm.
cool sound system for my car, so when school was done, I could blare,
Yeah.
Ludacris and just, go down Court Ave. Like that's where my mind was. And I see so many people in our organization and Ann Ellis, they went to 4 years colleges and they were great students. But what they're doing now, I would have hired them whether they had a degree or not. I just love their passion, their competence, their eagerness to learn and to grow, and they have the grit and determination, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking
Yeah.
for a degree. personally. That's
Yeah, and I think, there's a fine balance there, and obviously you can. My wife and I both went to 4-year schools. She went to grad school. She's now a librarian. The only reason I think I got through in 4 years was because of her. Uh, and I found way too late what I ultimately would have changed in that. I found it way too late was graphic design uh, and drawing. Uh, my senior year, I took every drawing course, every graphic design course I could because I started falling in love with it. But I found it way too late to kind of change anything, and then I kind of fell into sales and moving that direction. But I've always enjoyed that kind of creator. I have to physically when I write something, like that's my art piece, right?
right.
Like I've really dove down and I look back and I was like, I created that.
But
That's kind of where I've matured over the years.
but let me ask, in today's world, as we sit here right now in 2024, and somebody's on the verge of graduating high school and they want to be an illustrator or a cartoonist and they want to go work for, Cartoon Network or whatever. Can you not go on YouTube? I'm not trying to be like dismissive, but can you not go on YouTube or buy what could be a $2,500 kind of higher education package, and you're going to learn from somebody at Cartoon Network or wherever that will give you everything you need to know? And congratulations, you just saved $48,000.
Yeah, no, you absolutely can. And that's where I think like there's that match of ROI, right? And it's, higher ed was always a convenience package taught by expert people. Well, there's a flaw in that system because, professors and people stay in that system a long time, get tenure, and the costs have gone so high that now they have to balance that with tuition. And there's just a flaw, right? There's a fundamental flaw that is happening, and I think that convenienced packaging for the return is we're seeing, when you see, us waiving debt, student debt, and those sorts of things. I mean, it's coming, and I just think I'm just watching it like you, very interested. I have 2 kids in college right now, both at state schools, and they're both, one's a creative writer, the other one's in editing and music and video production. And absolutely, they both probably could more trade it out, do something that's more certificate based. But time will tell for sure.
Yeah. What you said, you have two kids in college.
Yep.
Did you push that, or were they like very adamant? Like how deep was that conversation? Not that we have to go into it publicly on a
No, it's
podcast,
good.
but like how deep was that conversation? Was it kind of a tough, like, hey, you can go, but also we also live in some pretty cool times right now where you can probably learn anything you need on the internet? Or was like, no, I want the community aspect of college, because that was all my friends.
Yeah, I think we're kind of at that precipice where certain ages are still seeing kind of their parents that have gone on to school, and there's still kind of that push, and it's still somewhat affordable depending on the route I go.
Right.
So we had both been, we believe our education has helped prepare us and propel us through our careers, and I think when you're married to a librarian, right, you kind of know, like, well, education and those sorts of things, like that's just part of the house. But
Yep.
But I think it was one of those too, like during COVID, when both of them kind of were graduating and going into school. There's a lot of, is this right for me? Is this not? But I think ultimately, at the end, to be glad you did it. But will it directly relate? That's going to be kind of the writing on the wall. And I think when you're asking a 22, 23-year-old to kind of figure life out, I'm still wrestling probably with a lot of that myself.
Right. And I think there will always be, I'm just speaking generally, I'm not talking like your household, but like there's a lot of kids that are coming out of very rigid, disciplined, very conservative homes that want to kind of break free from that. Like they want to go out and explore the bar scene. They want to go see live music. They want to do they want to stay up past 10 o'clock, and they'll do their homework when they want to do their homework. So I think it is kind of a way to kind of break away from the ecosystem that they were born and raised in. I think there's a big audience of those kids as well.
Well, the silent generation is usually the one that changes it, and they're coming up fast, so it'll be interesting.
I'm excited to see what happens. And then we're not going to talk about it here, but like then you talk about, let's talk about athletics of all these colleges, right? So the NIL. And I was sitting back, and you go on ESPN and all these places, sports talk shows, that's all they talk about is, is it name, image, and likeness, right? And Caitlin Clark was making what she deserves way more than what she was making as far as I'm concerned, and all these other athletes that got paid to go certain places. Which that was something we never thought would happen 10, 15 years ago. Like, can you imagine talking about like paying college players? It'd be like, oh no, like Reggie Bush got his Heisman trophy taken away, right? So there's a part of me that it's like, why? Like colleges for sports, college is just kind of a middleman at this point. Like, why don't they just have, so after high school, you have just a league that is independent of colleges? Like, just do that. Like, have it be the corridor Hawkeyes. I'm obviously making things up as I go, but like, why do you have to be involved in school at all? Like, no, I mean, some of them are obviously taking school very seriously and they're getting a lot of academic awards. So I'm not saying all athletes aren't into their studies. Of course, some of them are, but a lot aren't. So like, why even go to school? Like, just have a different league that then can put you in a position to go pro. Like, skip the college part.
They absolutely could. And, I think like Caitlin Clark as an example may not have been, I mean, definitely pushed the needle on the record books, but NIL definitely helped fuel that with the ability to market her brand, right? State Farm, Nike. Now those, they're using the power of marketing to be able to market sports as a whole. So I question, I mean, it would be a good experiment. If this was 10 years ago and she was doing this, would we have paid as much attention because they wouldn't have been able to market her name, image, or likeness?
Right.
That's another way to think about it. But I think the punchline that I see whenever like technologies or policies become more flexible, as an example, and we always tend to blame the policy or the technology as the blame. I think it's not the technology, it just exposes our natural tendencies.
Yeah.
As an example,
Yes.
right? Yeah. It just exposes us because now it's like I'm not policed. I think there's a movie that I watched called The Purge.
Oh,
I don't know if you've ever seen that. Like
I've
it's
seen
dark.
the first
Like
two. I think, yeah, it is very dark.
yeah, like
Very
you be
dark.
careful. But there's the idea is it exposes people's flaws, but then there's a subset that still believes in kind of policy and this is laws and abide by them. And I think it creates more dynamics on both sides.
Yeah.
But
well, it goes back to the creator economy. We're in a creator's economy right now, but we haven't seen anything yet. We've seen nothing yet because there's going to come a time where the Caitlin Clarks that are right now looking at, say, Nike, which I have plenty of Nike shoes behind me. I'm a Nike mark right here, but there's going to come a time where Caitlin Clark's going to have her own shoe. Like, it's not going to have a Nike swoosh on it, right? Like the future Caitlin Clarks or, these future athletes, they're going to start to build their own things. Like because you can launch those things, TikTok, Instagram. Like, you don't need these huge powerhouse companies. You need them right now. But 10 years from now, man, that landscape to me is going to look completely different.
Yeah, so I think with Caitlin Clark, I think building her own community, I think that's something that is very apparent now because when you think of social media, and this is kind of the whole behind the booth scenes, really social media, you're kind of at the mercy of them if you keep your audience on there and don't convert them into kind of your own community. I think you're finding this kind of on your other podcasts, as well as just in social media in general. Talk more about that.
Yeah, it's amazing how you can do 3 or 4 podcasts in a row and it does okay. But then you do another podcast, and on that episode, you bring up one specific topic and it blows up in a good way. I just had a clip that has done really well on YouTube Shorts and doing pretty well on Instagram. It was talking about like just because you're loud doesn't make you great, right? And there's nothing wrong with doing a self audit and becoming really quiet, if not silent, to work on your own stuff before you start to emerge back onto this creator scene, right? So I talked about if you're drinking too much, you're eating like crap, your marriage isn't great, your relationship with your kids aren't great, but then you're going on Instagram and Facebook and you're seeing all of the highlights of people that appear to have all of these things figured out. It makes you feel really, really bad about yourself, and you start to build that animosity toward them. And in most cases, you don't even know these other people. So that to me is something that like, okay, well, there's some relatability there. And if I'm saying it, obviously I've had to work on that, right? And there's a lot of other people that sometimes it just takes somebody to say it to build an audience that like, okay, this guy has shown me that he's very vulnerable and he's not coming across as somebody who knows it all and has it all figured out. And I'm trying to influence others based on my mindset. Here's the things that I've had to do that seem to have worked pretty well. Here's my take on it. And it starts to resonate in a very authentic way. And that's the audience that I want, by the way. Those that are reaching out and commenting, like that's the audience that I'm trying to build.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's Jack Conte, the CEO of Patreon. He builds this. He gave a South by Southwest talk recently, and this was the first time I've seen kind of this theory that I've been following for a while really make sense. And he thinks of social media up here as the reach, right? That's your reach, and then you have to go from there, and you build a following from that reach. So you're going down the funnel. And then does that following become a true fan and want to engage? And that's where you really need to focus in kind of these saturated markets is, hey, can I go from reaching people, right? My impressions, my likes, to actually my following, do they like and subscribe? And even that is at the mercy of a lot of things. But do I get them off the platform into my true fans, right? The ones that will purchase from me, will follow me, will engage with me, will make recommendations, will be there through thick and thin when I do new releases. And he's talking more on the Patreon side where, it's music
Right.
and comedians and those sorts of things. But I think it converts really nicely to what I said earlier, where was corporations are trying to be more individual and individuals are trying to be more corporate. You got to get down very fast, if you can, to that true fan side, or it's always going to be like throwing darts and fishing in a wide open sea.
Absolutely. And the key is the material. What are you going to say or do to attract the audience that will then become in some capacity consumers, right? And I think that's where it kind of can get like, oh, so wait, I'm doing all of this, or I'm following you, like where's the hook, right? Like I'm sensing this as bait. You want me to bite. But if you can do that in a very organic way, where just because they're consuming something from you, if you can turn that into the natural way of things, that's where I think you're going to have a very sustainable business model, because you're not doing this out of this like short-term agenda. You know what I mean?
It usually happens with me and my own buying behavior is they have given me so much value over a long period of time that something comes out and I'm like, man, I probably should buy something because they've 10x the value of what they're asking for that book or that webinar or what have you. Just more of an obligation out of the value. And maybe that's it. Like if you can make your fans feel so obligated because you provide them so much value that they can't help but pay you.
Yeah.
Man, that's a great spot to be into.
This is the least I can do. I want to give you $5 a month to join
no,
your
there's
Patreon.
definitely less you can do.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that is a great spot to wrap this up today. Great conversation, man. We went down some rabbit holes here on it, but yeah, until next time, that's a spinning strategy. I'm Chad Greenlee.
And I am Riley Mullane.
We'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.